Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. We are live on our YouTube channel. Good morning, everybody. And it's a good morning for Illinois football, brightening up some Illini spirits after a difficult Illinois basketball loss. But Joey Wagner joining me. We'll have a special guest here in just a minute. But Illinois football recruiting, so hot right now. Joey Wagner, 4-star Ohio linebacker Cam Thomas, 4-star in the Composite, 3-star 24/7 Sports. He commits this morning to Illinois just 5 days after 4-star Ohio cornerback Victor Singleton, one of the top 50 prospects in the country, commits to Illinois as well. So let's talk about it, Joey. We'll also hit on 3-star 2025 linebacker Jack Paris, signing week sleeper this year. Clint Sintum leaving Illinois after 1 year, and some other Illini football things. But Joey, initial reaction to 4-star Composite prospects out of Ohio for Illinois.
Illinois football saving the mood in February around Illinois athletics. This was one I remember talking to him when he was on a game day visit, and I thought, man, this guy's got a lot of offers. We'll see, right? That's kind of what it was. Like, I don't know here. It's hard to get a read on that. The list was really impressive, and Illinois has done a good job of getting into Ohio and obviously getting Grant Bierman and Grant Bierman selling what Illinois is in real time. It's been a pretty good week for Illinois football, and Cam Thomas just adds to a linebacker room that, again, like, I want to erase from the internet all the pods we had back in October wondering about what this was, because this thing is totally reformed right now.
Yeah, we'll dive into all of that, the intricacies here locally, but I wanted to get the really Midwest, regional, national perspective on this. And as always, Alan Trieu is kind enough to join us, 24/7 Sports recruiting analyst nationally. Alan, quite a week for Illinois to go into Ohio and get two of the better defensive prospects out of that state. What do you think?
First, I wish they would wait until after National Signing Day is done, but I'm sure they'll take them whenever they can get them. But certainly had heard some rumblings that Victor Singleton was high on Illinois. Didn't think it was going to happen quite this soon.
Right.
That's as big of an early get as Illinois has had at this time of the year in maybe our entire time working together.
The only two that can compare would be Marquez Beeson and Isaiah Williams, and Singleton's rated even higher, and the offer lists are similar, but those are the only two who are even close.
And you knew, like, Illinois had some inroads with both of those guys, whereas Victor, they've had to come, the other schools have had a good head start on him. So that's a monumental get. And then you follow it up with Cam Thomas, who, as Joey mentioned, had plenty of opportunities to go elsewhere. And I think it's just some schools have good seasons and you don't always see them capitalize on the recruiting trail. Illinois has wasted no time. So it's good to see that. Let's strike while the iron's hot. And clearly these recruits are buying into the fact that this is going to be something that continues. It's not a 1-year thing there in Champaign.
Tell me about Victor Singleton, top 50 prospect, number 1 prospect out of Ohio, according to 24/7 Sports. What makes him that good, and what does he bring to Illinois once he signs here?
Yeah, I mean, I think his skill set is super. I think when you look at him physically, there's a lot of room there for him to grow still. He's still can add a lot of weight to his frame. So he's not like a guy who walks into the room and you're like, oh, wow, that must be a top 100 player in the country. I think when you put the tape on and you see what he does man-to-man, Toledo Central Catholic plays a really hard schedule year after year. So he has seen a lot of top flight talent, and he is really good when it comes to man-to-man coverage. All the things that defensive back coaches talk about, the hips, the ability to turn and run with somebody, the ball skills, goes up into the air and challenges on 50-50 balls, kind of has that sixth sense, those instincts that you need at the position. So I think when you put all of that together, along with his competitiveness and the competition that he has to see week after week and playing late into the season, they're a perennial state title contender. I think all of that is what has made him such a highly recruited prospect. Michigan and Ohio State certainly don't have to turn over every corner to find cover men. Those are two schools that have a good history at defensive back. So the fact that they were as hard after him as they were tells you something about him also.
Yeah, Corey Parker's relationship for 2 years. He's the first guy to offer him when he was in Toledo. Certainly played a role in Illinois. I mean, DB cell pretty strong here with Devin Witherspoon and Kirby Joseph doing what they're doing in the NFL, Xavier Scott with what he's doing. But let's go to Cam Thomas. He's a 4-star in the Composite, a high 3-star for 24/7 Sports. Not that much different in the high school ranking, the Ohio State ranking there for Cam Thomas. What do you think of him as a recruiting get and as a prospect for Illinois?
Yeah. So first, in general, I think when you look at these two guys together, if you're going to get into a Midwest state, Ohio's a pretty good one to get into. And if you're going to get into an area of Ohio, that kind of Dayton, Cincinnati area, another pretty good one to get into. And they're doing that now with Grant Bierman. And then on top of that, now with Cam Thomas. So he's been really productive at that school. Another one that plays good competition week after week. And he does a little bit of everything on the field. I think he can rush the passer off the edge. You see him playing some defensive end. You see him playing some stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker, which I imagine Illinois is going to do some of that with him. You see him doing some of the same things that you see on Jacob Alexander's tape as far as standing up and rushing the passer from the outside. But then he can kind of drop back and play a little bit more of a traditional linebacker, can play a little Mike. I mean, and I think these days you need those chess pieces on your defense. And so that's what stands out to me the most, is that when you watch him, especially initially, it's not clear like where should this guy play at the next level. It's more like he could probably do 2 to 3 to 4 different things for a defense and be very multiple.
Alan, Illinois has gotten into Ohio more and more in the last couple classes. Why do you think they've been able to come in and have some success? It's not like they're just picking off the fringes. I mean, they're getting some really good players out of that state.
Yeah. So some of it, I think, with recruiting is always just effort. Will you go in and battle? And will you go in and make a kid feel like they're important? And they've been able, especially with these two guys, if you ask them, that's what they'll say. But, when Coach Bielema was at Wisconsin, they got into Ohio a good amount. So he has some ties. They've done well there. Obviously, with Coach Parker having just been at Toledo, and I think there's been some other ties on the staff to the state of Ohio. And then you just start to, it's like a shooter in basketball. You kind of get one shot to fall, and sometimes though they keep falling. And I think that's what's happening right now. They're on a hot streak with it. They have a good name in that state. And I think that with the success they've had in the Big Ten, those kids watch a lot of Big Ten football. So you're seeing that too. So I don't know that there's anything more specific. I think it's a combination of a lot of those things, but also, I do believe that there can be momentum in recruiting, especially when it comes to recruiting a state and an area. And Illinois has got that right now in Ohio.
All right, Alan, off camera, we'll catch you up. Why it's too soon to say hot streak shooting in basketball on an Illinois podcast. It's you really touched a nerve there. Corey Parker, I remember when he got hired, I know some of us were like, okay, who is this guy? And I remember you were like, hey, hold, this is a guy, like this is someone. So what is it about him?
So, I mean, almost as soon as he became a high school coach, people were saying at the high school, enjoy him while you can. This guy's going to be a college coach before long, and he'll be maybe a college head coach before long. And that he's certainly on that path. I don't know that even then everyone thought it was going to go as fast as it has. First of all, just, I think, a very personable guy, and a guy who has always kind of gone about it the right way. When he was coaching in the high school ranks, he did a lot of outside football stuff with his team, kind of had them very prepared for life outside of football, was always big on sportsmanship, and can really go into a living room or a high school and win the room over. And I don't think it's not done in a salesman type way either. It's who he is. And so I think that, and then, the question then is when you become a college coach, can you build the resume of players that you've developed and coached? And right away he gets Quinion Mitchell. And then, like you guys said, he goes to a program at Illinois that's had great success at cornerback. And if there's a guy who can really sort of sell that and enhance that, Corey Parker is going to do that. So I think it's like the perfect storm of factors. But anybody who has known Corey and has seen him come up through the high school ranks, it's not surprised by this at all. If anything, the people in this state are up in arms that Michigan and Michigan State let him go to Illinois.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch his career path because he's got a very, very bright future. And if you enter a room with Corey Parker, you're going to feel energized by the end of it. That is for sure. Alan, you mentioned it, that Illinois is taking advantage. Not everybody takes advantage of a very good season. What are you seeing of why? Whether it's Illinois, or how does a team take advantage on the recruiting trail as quickly and as effectively as they have?
So again, just getting around, making sure that you're on the road in January, which everybody's doing, but I feel like they really put the miles on. And in saying that, your head coach is doing it too. You know, I just saw he was at JC Anderson's basketball game and those kinds of things. And so I think when you're that involved, it starts even before that. I think when you and I, like when we talked week to week and I looked at who Illinois was bringing to campus every week for unofficial visits, I think a lot of that foundation is laid also. So, you know, Cam Thomas was up there. He was up there last spring. I think they've done a really good job of getting kids to campus prior to this point in the year. By the time kids are ready to take official visits and commit, a lot of the time they've been up for unofficial visits. So I don't think it's any secret when you look at the guys who have already committed. You know, they've had those guys up a bunch. They've built good relationships with those guys, and they make those guys feel prioritized. They have a very clear plan for them, which I think is important too. When you have guys who are versatile, Jacob Alexander can do a lot of different things. Cam Thomas can do a lot of different things. Illinois has been very clear with what they would do in their defense. They're good fits. And both of those guys have been up to campus a bunch. Both of them have a good relationship with the staff. So I think it's that, you know, it sounds funny. Recruiting's not that complicated when you mention those factors, but not everybody does it. And Illinois does those things, and they do it to a T. And I think it starts at the top. Coach Bielema really values recruiting, values relationships, and I think that trickles down.
Alan, when you have this itch, right? Fans want the next one. They want another 4-star. Who you kind of looking at for Illinois of who could be next? Who could be the next big get for them? Because right now their class is number 9 according to 24/7 Sports, number 13 according to the Composite. Now that'll change. Other schools will get a lot more, but Illinois is in a top 30 class since 2011. They seem like they're on pace to do that. So who you kind of have in your target for Illinois right now to watch in the coming months?
You know, I think the first guy is going to be Nasir Rankin. People want to know. It seemed like that was trending in a good direction. I still think it is. It maybe isn't going as fast as we thought it would, but I think Illinois is still in a really good position for him. I think they're going to now be able to circle back and really kind of work on some of these in-state guys. And so, you know, and maybe some of the guys that aren't quite as highly ranked as Nasir, but I could see guys like Owen Fors being somebody that they have a good shot with. Gene Reardon's going to be really interesting to me because Iowa has 4 offensive line commits now. He didn't jump on it when he was there, and I think Illinois has done a good job there. I think Illinois' home visit before he went to Iowa may be a big reason he didn't pull the trigger when he was in Iowa State. You know, he could let 3 other offensive linemen commit that weekend when he was there and kind of risked that spot. And I think that Illinois has a lot to do with that. So, you know, those couple of guys are the first ones I would look at. But certainly Nasir's the big one. They would love to close that one out soon. Some other schools are trying to keep him from doing it too early so that they can try to get him out on campus. So there's a little bit of a battle going on there, but I feel good about where Illinois is at, whether he commits now or in a couple months.
I just want to ask you last one I got for you. JC Anderson and Max Suter, 2 kids in the backyard for Illinois, 4-star tight ends, a position where they really want to elevate. Just they haven't had those dynamic pass catchers. What do you think of those recruitments and where Illinois is at there?
Yeah, both of them are very national, and neither guy has really like narrowed down a list. They always say, hey, you know, follow the visits. Both of those guys have visited schools like all over the country. So it's hard to glean much from that. Of the 2, I think right now, Illinois probably has the better chance with JC. I mean, he's got Braden Trimble there. He's already set an official to Illinois, which is huge for them to get one of those. And it's on the earlier end, but they've had some success with those spring officials. So I think that they're very much in the hunt for JC. With Mac, probably a little bit more difficult. I know he set an official to Penn State. I would think he ends up at least taking another unofficial to Illinois, if not using an official on Illinois. I see him as the more difficult of the 2, but Illinois is in both recruitments. I would say JC probably more than one to watch of the 2, though, at this point.
Alan Trieu, 24/7 Sports, national recruiting analyst. Alan, always appreciate the time, my man, especially on short notice. We appreciate you.
Of course. We have so much reason to talk to each other now. I assume we'll keep doing it.
Alan, thank you, man.
Thanks.
All right, great stuff as always from Alan Trieu. Good stuff there, Joey. But for me, this is unprecedented. We were talking with Alan before this. Like, I haven't covered like this hot of a start to a class. I don't think I've ever seen Illinois with, you know, more than a handful of commitments. Maybe it was when Beeson and Williams were on board. have like a top 15 recruiting class, like for football. This is different. And I think Alan is right. It starts from the top. It's you got to care about recruiting. You got to win games. But I think the head man is a huge X factor in all of this. But the recruiting operation is full effort. It's full staff. And when you got a head coach like Bret Bielema, and the success you have on the field, the development success you've had with the NFL draft. I mean, only Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State have had more NFL draft success of the previous 14 Big Ten teams in Illinois over the last 3 years. It all adds up to where they had a chance for momentum, and boy, they're taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it sucks with Bielema. You hear from every coach, assistant coach you talk to, staffer you talk to, that he's going to outwork pretty much everybody on the recruiting trail, at least in the building, and I would assume that extends beyond the building. And, it's funny, we spent a little time earlier this offseason kind of having some fun with Brad on Twitter, right? And that's his thing. If he goes out there and he likes to talk a little smack and he likes to hit you in the head with his program, that is for recruiting as much as it is for Brett to talk a little trash, for Brett to, interact. That is so people cannot avoid what he's saying about his program. He puts it out there a ton. There's a reason in press conferences where if we ask Brett a question, we're going to start here. We're going to get all the way over here. And on our way there, it's going to be a recruiting pitch in some capacity. And then he circles back. Like, that's not a knock. He finds a way to work that into every time he's in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, whatever way he does it, behind a keyboard. However it is, he's going to hit you with that. And it's intentional.
Did people know he's a marketing major, or he was?
Yeah, he's going to bring that up next time we talk about it. You guys always say, yeah, we do, because you're doing a good job with it. And then, I mean, that's just stuff we see, right? It's stuff we hear, but I think then you go behind the scenes and you hear that Bret Bielema is hitting what transfer was it? I think there was a transfer. He hit him with like a U up at like 11 o'clock when he went in the portal to really start to build that dialogue and that relationship. We've seen him in Mount Zion for J.C. Anderson. We've seen him in Dunlap for Max Suter. I mean, he's putting in the work. And then at that point, we know how Bret Bielema works, and we know the expectation of work in the Bret Bielema program. It continues to trickle down, right? I mean, I think it's no secret why Corey Parker's come in and hit the gas. He was ready to work, and Bret Bielema's got that expectation, and it just goes. So Alan was right. I know it sounds like a Bret Bielema public service announcement. I don't mean for it to sound like that, but it's true. It starts with him, and pretty much every way he puts his program out there.
Victor Singleton is an amazing prospect. Top 100, top 50, wherever you put him. You turn on the film and you're like, yeah, that's what Aaron Henry and Corey Parker wanting into DB. I don't want to throw out like a Devin Witherspoon comparison, but you look at the film and it's like he's 6 foot, a little bit lanky, could use a little bit more strength, but incredibly sticky in coverage, tenacious, really smart football player. So I think it's got some Xavier Scott written all over him as well. Like, it's just a great prospect that Michigan was pushing for. Like, I know Ohio State was kind of the favorite for that for a while. It was a crystal ball picking for Ohio State, but like Jerome Moore was in his house and, visiting his school, trying to get him, and Illinois won this. And I look at it, Joey, just as kind of the perfect storm for Illinois in that you hired Corey Parker, who is the first scholarship offer for Singleton, had developed a relationship, is not far from where he was from, right? Toledo, Detroit, very short drive. And obviously had built a great relationship there. You had Corey Parker, who developed Quinyon Mitchell, the first cornerback taken in the 2024 draft, who had a great rookie year. You have Aaron Henry, who developed Devin Witherspoon, the first cornerback picked in the 2023 draft, who was a 2-time Pro Bowler. And you have Illinois coming off a 10-win season. Like, it all kind of aligned. And I think Illinois' NIL budget is now they can compete with some of these other schools. I think it was a great kind of perfect storm for this prospect for Illinois to land him, but they had to put themselves in that position to do it with the right people, with the development and the winning. And look what happens.
Yeah, I will say I heard at some point last season, I heard his name kind of come on the radar, and I did a little more research, and I thought, okay, this might be really, whatever, we'll see. And obviously, there was probably a lot more inroads beyond just this last 2 months than we knew about. And then to get him on campus for that junior day happened on a Saturday night. So a little bit of that can be overlooked in some ways, just in the news cycle and how it goes. But it's a massive commitment. I mean, you're talking the headliner of the class, a headliner of a good class. This isn't like you're headlining a class that's ranked 60 something in the country. This is a really good get. And you're right. The perfect storm work. Corey Parker, I thought Allen nailed it with him. Like we need to talk about him a lot, Jeremy, because obviously he has a relationship and he built that relationship. He was the first offer for Victor Singleton when he was at Toledo and just kept going with it. And he went to a new school and he kept going with it. And he kept making sure he was in that conversation, and Illinois was in that conversation. And then once you make sure you're in there, then you can sell, okay, you know about Quinyon Mitchell, right? Well, hey, this is what they did with Devin Witherspoon, or this is what they did with Sidney Brown, Quan Martin. I know not, apples to apples positionally, but you're still talking DBs. And Quan, yeah, absolutely. You're still talking about DBs in the NFL. And hey, Xavier Scott, first team guy, like all of a sudden, maybe you didn't know, but that relationship with Corey Parker, now you kind of find your way a little bit. And then Bret Bielema jumps in as heavily as he does in that. And you really got some gas. So yeah, you're right. And by the way, they win games. Right? I mean, NFL is great. And that's a big deal to send guys to the NFL, but people want to win too. And you come off a 10-win season and looks like they're in store for another really good season based on who's coming back. And suddenly that snowball is going down the hill at a really, really fast speed.
Yeah. And they are losing Xavier Scott, Torrey Cox Jr. after the 2025 season. So this is a guy who can come in and compete for playing time. Now, I think Caleb Patterson, Jaheim Clark, Vernon Woodward are going to be in his way, and those guys are going to be developed. And now you've had Amar Reynolds, Tywan Cox, and Scott, Robert Jones III. So there's some talent there, but this is a guy who can come in and make an early impact, whether that's on the rotation or in special teams. And certainly by sophomore year, I think he's going to be a huge part of that cornerback room. But then to follow it up with Cam Thomas out of Ohio, let's hit on that first. Like, Ohio has been so good to Illinois previously. Ron Zook went in and got some good players out of Ohio, including Whitney Merciless, Steve Hull, Hugh Thornton, Jeff Cumberland. Like, he was in some big battles there. And then even Tim Beckman, some of his most solid players, his NFL players, including Christian DeLauro, DeJuan Smoot, Chunky Clements, came from Ohio. Those guys both had ties there. Lovey tried to get into Ohio early, and he got Rayvon Bonner and Hojo Watkins, and Bonner made somewhat of an impact. Watkins got kicked off the team. But then it just kind of gave up. They never got back in there. He signed 2 players his entire tenure out of Ohio, and slowly but surely we've seen Terrence Jamison put in a lot of work there, to his credit. You've seen Archie McDaniel now come in and get 2 really good linebackers. We'll talk about the linebacker position here, but to get back into Ohio is huge, because we talk about Florida and how important that is because it's overflowing with talent. Well, in the Midwest, just 4 hours away from your border, right, is Ohio that has all of this talent. And now Illinois goes and gets 3 composite 4-star prospects in the last 4 months with Bierman, Singleton, and they've been building it up, right? Like Eric Gale was a good get, flipping him from Cincinnati. Demetrius John, Angelo McCollum had power 4 offers. Colin Dixon was a big get that made a big impact on your 10-win season last year. So I'm just really happy to see Illinois getting in there. Of course, they've gotten into Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, Nebraska a little bit. So these places are right next to you. Put in the effort, and you can steal some talent. And I love that Bielema's gotten them back in the Midwest. I think Terrence Jamison deserves a lot of credit too.
Yeah, Terrence Jamison was kind of the first when the staff was put together to venture over to Ohio, and it wasn't the most fruitful early for Illinois, but they stayed with it, and I think that's Bret Bielema's been around the Midwest. He knew that you can't just bail out if it's not fruitful early, and that they stuck kind of staying in that state, making sure they knew, hey, there's talent here. We need to go get that talent. Then, Colin Dixon, you said his name. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Yeah, like that feels like forever ago, given what they've done. But I think it's important to point out, and we talked about this with Allen. It's not like they're just picking around the fringes. It's not like they're just taking, the 30th ranked player in the state of Ohio or the 25th player just to go in there and do
those are pretty good players, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not trying to disparage 30th ranked player in the state of Ohio, but they're in those battles for teams that for Power 5 kids, for kids that have a really good list of offers. Illinois is going in there and kind of getting some footing in that state. And that's obviously something that's going to play out down the line here. And Corey Parker, his presence there on top of what Terrence Jamison did early on in kind of building these relationships across the Midwest, I think that's taken it over the top here, at least in these last couple classes.
Yeah, we think of Illinois, it's usually like 30 to 40, Power 4 prospects, if that. Ohio is generally like 50 to 60. So like it's just got deeper talent. It could be even more than that. But guys like Demetrius John, great prospect, was number 29 in that class. Eric Gale's number 55. How many Power 4 offers that guy had? So really good to get into there. But man, the linebacker room's changed a lot. You mentioned it off the bat, Joey. And entering November, like, what is this position? Like, what do they have here long term? And then kudos to them for the development. And I think putting those guys in positions to succeed in sub packages really helped James Kreutz, Malachi Hood, Kenenna Odaluga getting back into the mix, even Ryan Mead, who's obviously moved on now with graduation. But those guys all played their best ball late in the season. So kudos Archie McDaniel and Aaron Henry for that. But you still couldn't ignore that for most of the season, this group looked overmatched, overwhelmed, Joey, just physically and talented. Need more length. Need more guys who can make plays in space. And since then, they've added Grant Bierman, a four-star composite prospect, flip him from Purdue. You add Ishmael Conte, who ends up being the number 1 JUCO linebacker in this class. You get a late sleeper, and Jack Paris, 3-star prospect out of Fenwick. Flip him from Air Force, really interesting player. And then now you add a 4-star composite prospect in Cam Thomas with all these Big Ten offers. So he has quickly flipped that room. It is upgraded talent. And you're just really old at that position, right? I mean, James Kreutz, Malachi Hood only have 2 years of eligibility left. Dylan Rosiak and Kenenna Odaluga will be gone after this season. So you needed to add some youth and some talent, and he's certainly done that. So kudos to McDaniel.
Yeah, it's very clear what they're looking for at inside linebacker with this defense. I mean, I think that's kind of the big takeaway from the last 4 or 5 months, Jeremy, is big, fast, athletic. Doesn't really sound like we're breaking any news, right, in terms of what works at linebacker. But
I would add versatile, and we can get into that too.
Sure, yeah. But they're getting what their ideal is, right? They don't really have to sacrifice maybe this or that. At least they haven't been in the last couple of classes. You think about, I remember when we had Aaron Henry on the pod after signing day. I don't know what this past one I don't think we did a live show, but before that, said, Andy Boo came in and said, oh yeah, I want to, everything that Illinois has been getting. Like, okay, yeah, everyone wants a 6'3" linebacker who can run like crazy and physical, all get out. Then he comes back in with Easton Baker's tape, and the tape is really good. And Easton Baker is an exciting prospect. He hits hard, he plays fast. He just doesn't have the height, right? Doesn't have that size. But now you're seeing Illinois get all of those things in that linebacker room. And kind of Archie McDaniel, man, he is really – it's clear he's a good coach. He's been around long enough to know when he got hired he's a good coach. And you're seeing him and those relationships he's building on the recruiting trail. That's paid off. This room has taken – I was trying to compare this, Jeremy. Hopefully you can help me. In terms of the last 1.5 recruiting cycles, 2, if we want to go there, what position do you compare how this room has shifted? You stay within the Illinois. Like, think about the way we talked about wide receivers 2 years ago. Like, all of a sudden you've got a lot of these prototypes that Illinois wants and talent at that position. That reminds me of what's happening at linebacker.
For sure, because as they were getting the most out of Isaiah Williams and Casey Washington and obviously Pat Bryant, you still were looking at the future. Like, what is this position going to be? Just because the recruiting was not up to the level it needed to be. And you had Malik Elzy and Hank Beatty and Colin Dixon and obviously Ashton Hollins. And now you have Braden Tribble to it. And you feel like it can be something good for the long term. Like, you flipped it from a negative on the team to a positive. I feel like that's happening with linebacker. I mean, you think of some of these games against Kansas or against Penn State, it's just like, can't match up. You just can't match up with those running backs. So what they've added, I'm really intrigued by. I mean, Bierman's my favorite of these guys. Illinois now lists him at 6'5". He's legit that big, 220 pounds, and just so fast for his size. It's just a different level of speed. And it's just that is what you're going to want at the NFL level. So got to develop all those things, but he could make an impact on the field, especially on special teams early. Conte, twitchy, athletic, maybe a little raw, but you need those kind of traits. And now you had guys like even Jack Paris, he's 6'3". Like, even James Kreutz is long, but he's 6 foot. Like, there's just a little bit difference there. And I just think the speed and athleticism continues to improve for these guys. But what really interests me about Cam Thomas is his versatility, because they've kind of wanted this overhang linebacker that kind of plays on the edge, but is also able to drop into coverage, gives you some pass rush value, could also go sideline to sideline. They just haven't had a lot of bodies like that. 6'2", 220, strong enough to hold the edge, strong enough to play at the line of scrimmage, but also athletic enough to make plays in space. CJ Hart was that for a game before he got hurt, right? But I think that's what they wanted, and we saw more of that overhang linebacker when he was in here. But Kanena's just not big enough. JoJo's not quite big enough to do those things. I think Cam Thomas is. So I'm interested to see the versatility he can bring to that linebacker room, to see if they run more 4-man front with an overhang linebacker, like a guy like Cam Thomas. So I agree with Alan. Like, we want to pigeonhole these guys into a certain role. Like, he's playing off linebacker, behind the defensive tackles. Now, Illinois plays these linebackers everywhere to kind of be an amoeba of a defense, be multiple. And I think Cam Thomas really helps with that. And Bret Bielema mentioned that Bierman can play on the edge and rush the passer a little bit, which at his size, he certainly could do.
Yeah, you're saying all that. I went back to look at when I talked to Cam Thomas, and he visited for, I don't even remember which game that was, sometime Purdue game. And, you do the whole, what are you doing here? Tell me about yourself, whatever. He said, quote, "I'm very versatile. I'm fast off the ball. I'm able to move in space very well. I'm just fast. He likes speed. I'm fast to the ball. When my motor is going, I'm the best player on the field." Versatility, speed, everything that they covet. You're right. Like, we do. We want to, and comparisons are a part of that, right? You see a recruit and like, okay, he fits like X player. And you think of it like that, and it's a fair way to do it because it helps put it into context, maybe what these guys can bring to Illinois. But it's clear that the staff defensively, especially, versatility is everything. And we saw some of that get tapped into, Jeremy, late with that like turbo package or whatever. But now you don't have to have a special sub package to get that speed on the field. Maybe your speed is just on the field. And I think that is what you're seeing this shift into, especially in that linebacker room when we talked about speed and the turbo package. Sure, that got General Hunt, but we were talking about linebackers with that. That was really what that was, is get your really fast linebackers out there and make things a problem. And now, you add that versatility in there with Cam Thomas, maybe with Grant Bierman. And all right, now this is starting to take shape.
All right. So we had heard like over the weekend that they're going to have an official visitor, and that they were in fact going to have a 2025 sleeper late addition to this class, which they've had a pretty good run of. Matthew Bailey in 2022, Matt Krasetich in 2023, Tanner Heckel in 2024. Now they add Jack Paris out of Fenwick, 6'3", 210-pound linebacker. He cuts a little weight for wrestling, which he's been a state wrestler for the last 2 years, sophomore and junior year, and looking to get back to state this month. But you turn on the film, Joe, and it's good. It's like, why aren't more Power 4 teams interested here? But Pat Ryan, the director of Illinois High School Relations, the former Metamora coach, was huge in staying on Bailey, was huge in staying on Matt Krasetich. He seems to always find one guy that he really likes, stays in touch with him, and Illinois ended up having an extra scholarship, and he trusted the process. He trusted Pat Ryan, and here he is. So I think he's a good prospect. I think he's going to need some time to develop, add strength. He'll get here in June, but another interesting linebacker prospect that adds depth, that has potential. And boy, the hit rate of these late additions has been as good as anything for Illinois.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're at the point with these late additions where, all right, yeah, well, I'm sure this will work. I don't know when it's all going to come together, but I'm sure this will work. It's interesting. I mean, you said, like, I'm with you. You turn on his tape. I almost wanted to pull up the first clip of his huddle because I know it's like a personal favorite of Jeremy Werner just flying through the air.
Yeah, it's like a Sunday hit.
But he played at Fenwick. It's not like he was hidden. Matt Krasetich was fairly hidden. You talk about Tanner Heckel was fairly hidden. Matthew Bailey not as hidden at Moline. It's not some program that flies under the radar, but Fenwick, I mean, that's a pretty well-traveled place for college coaches and for people. So the film looks like a guy who is overlooked. He plays fast, he plays smart, he plays physically. Sure, when we talk to Bret Bielema next week, those are going to be a lot of the things he points out and when talking about Jack Paris. But yeah, Pat Ryan, man, like it kind of some of those staffers in the recruiting department can get overlooked. I mean, Pat Embleton gets a lot of shine because he's the GM and he's been around forever and everyone knows who he is. Dre Brown was an alum before he left for USC, or he's still an alum, but he was an alum and then ultimately left for USC. So he kind of knew Dre, right? But Pat Ryan's a guy that maybe not everybody knows. If you follow high school closely in the state of Illinois, you should know who Pat Ryan is, but he knows every coach in the state and well. And if you talk to Pat, you understand why every coach in the state probably likes the guy.
Love it.
That kind of personality, guy who's generated trust. And that helps when you're telling, I know your story, you're telling Jack Paris, hang tight, don't freak out. And if your high school coach is like, hey, trust in Pat, Pat's going to make sure you're in a good spot. That matters and that's valuable. And I think you can go on down the line, Jeremy, of where you've seen that with Pat Ryan. But yeah, sleeper, I think, every time we're like, are they going to have one in this class? They will. They will have one. And you just got to kind of wait it out and see who it is. And the hit rate, as you mentioned, has been good.
All right, let's talk about a few staff things here. Dre Brown leaves to USC. That was a shock. He was valued on the staff as a recruiter. He's out on the road. I think that tells you what Bret Bielema thought about what he added to the recruiting dynamic. And as we've talked about many times on this podcast, and Pat Embleton's talked about, he fought to get Dre here. And Dre left Notre Dame. He's a lateral move to come here. So I was pretty shocked. He moved for what looks like a lateral move to USC. He's getting a huge pay bump. Huge pay bump. I don't want to talk about the cost of living differences and all of that, but it's a huge pay bump for Dre Brown to go out to USC. And what is a very crowded recruiting department, USC is throwing a ton of money. They stole Chad Bowden from Notre Dame. Dre's got a really great relationship there, so that played a big role in this as well. But they also stole Wisconsin's GM. So this is like one of the most expensive and biggest recruiting departments that USC is assembling. But I think this obviously took Illinois by surprise and will be interesting to see. But obviously the last week has shown that it's not going to derail everything with what Illinois football is doing, because even though Dre is a help with the recruiting, and I think he was very valuable to the staff, it starts with Bret Bielema. It starts with the assistant coaches, the coordinators, and obviously Embleton and the rest of that staff do a really, really good job too. So I'll be interested to see where they go to replace him. They have gone with guys from in-state, Nate McNeil, Dre Brown for that role the last couple of times. I'm interested to see where they go from here, but I think Illinois football recruiting will still continue to do fine. It has continued to do fine without Dre the last week. That is for sure.
Yeah, two things can be true. Dre Brown was good at his job.
Yes.
He was trusted in the state. He was trusted in the building to go out on the road and recruit. And Illinois football will be fine recruiting. Those two things don't have to fight each other in terms of what can be true. And Dre took a job. I mean, yeah, it's a big pay bump to go to USC and see if you can be a part of getting that thing back on the tracks that USC is part of. And Bret Bielema has a big contact list. Pat Embleton has a lot of respect. They will be fine. And as you mentioned, you come out after Dre Brown leaves and you get 2 composite 4-star prospects. Things are okay. It is a shock. And again, Dre was well-liked. His career was something that everyone followed. People admired the way that he came back from his injuries, ultimately came back to his alma mater, kept, pushing forward in what's been a really elevated recruiting process for Illinois. It'll be all right. Bret Bielema is still a really good recruiter. Their staff is still really good recruiters. You can say it's a loss. You can say that he did a good job without assuming that prospects are going to flock out of Illinois by the dozens.
I want to be transparent. I think it's an interesting move for Dre, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of stability here with Bret Bielema. It was his alma mater. His wife is from here. But there's all these personal reasons. There's also the professional. I mean, Lincoln Riley's not on the coolest of seats at USC, despite a massive buyout, which might help him. But I would have thought if you're going to go anywhere, go back to Notre Dame. and just take over that recruiting department. But be interesting to see how this works out for Dre. He's 27. He's young. He'll be fine. He's very valuable. But I just to leave the alma mater after 1 year, I was pretty shocked by that.
Yeah, it was a surprising move, especially because, as we mentioned, we'd seen him out on the road and in houses and talking to prospects with, alongside Terrence Jamison or Bart Miller or Robbie Disher, whoever. I mean, that you don't typically, and we'll get into Clint Senham and why the two things were a little bit different in terms of what we saw from a recruiting standpoint, but you don't typically go from that and see that to all of a sudden, hey, I'm headed west to USC. So I'm not trying to disparage Dre for making that decision. I'm with you. I have some questions about, long term in terms of what that looks like, but it's definitely a surprising kind of getting tipped off about that one morning and seeing how that kind of transpired over the next 36 hours.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Clint Senham. I mean, this has been a terribly kept secret. No one has really talked about it, but it was clear that Clint Senham, his future was in doubt with Illinois as he had not been seen on the recruiting trail. Illinois landed 2 outside linebackers despite that in Kingston Shaw and Jacob Alexander. And Senham was part of the pitch to Cam Thomas early in this thing. But he's leaving Illinois after 1 year going to Colorado State. That's a move down. So I think we can fairly speculate. We'll talk to Bret Bielema, but it seems like Illinois is deciding to move on after 1 year. I don't know all the reasons behind that. But most importantly, Joey, this will be the 4th straight year of transition at that position. Kevin Kane got a promotion. Charlie Bullen went back to the NFL, which is a promotion. Now Senham moves on after 1 year. It's amazing that what they've been able to do at that position, despite all of that. Gabe Akis has continued to stay here and has gotten better and better despite all that. Bret Bielema is a big part of that. I know they're high on Trent Harris, the assistant outside linebackers coach, Alex Panos, who's been a staffer here the last couple of years under Terrence Jamison. He can help that group as well. But be interesting to see why this happened, hear why this happened from Bret Bielema if he says anything, and where they plan to go with this 10th assistant spot, Joey, because outside linebacker coach would make sense and they can go get a good one. But also, do you decide to put it into another position? We could talk about some of the ideas we have there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, anyone watching this kind of saw okay, Kingston Shaw, who you talking to, Terrence Jamison, and you go down the line, Trent Harris. And Clint Senham's name didn't come up. You didn't see pictures of him on the road. You kind of were able to say something is a little bit off here in terms of what we're seeing. I think prospects certainly knew, right? I mean, I think Bret Bielema is transparent enough. You still go get Kingston Shaw. You still go get Jacob Alexander. You still go get Leon Lowry. I don't think you were telling them, yeah, this guy will be here. You bet. Yep. I promise you he'll be here. And then in February, he's gone. That's not how Bret Bielema operates. So I think the fact that they were still getting prospects tells you that Bret Bielema has a plan. Trent Harris is a guy, played for Bielema with the Patriots and the Giants, I believe. I want to say it was both. It was unquestionably one, a guy that I know they're high on in terms of being a coach, and similar to Byron Bell, a guy that they think is a younger guy early in his coaching career, but has a really high ceiling in terms of where he can go. Is that a path they go down? The 10 assistant thing, we should probably talk about that real quick, Jeremy, and how that has changed over the last couple of years. It used to be only 10 assistants and some GAs, right? Could coach players on the field. Obviously, 10 assistants could go out on the road. You can have any 10 out on the road. You just can't have 11, which is why you've seen.
And any coach can coach on the field. There's really the 10 assistant spots really do not matter as much because you can pay those guys whatever you want. Yes. The analysts or the assistant linebackers coach or whatever it is, you can pay those guys whatever you want. They can go on the road recruiting. They can, coach on the field now, which I think is a great thing. But it is more about status, right? I think it's more about the power they have in that room, all those things, and it helps them move up, and it really helps you pay those guys more because there's a limit to what you can pay these assistants.
Yes, that's probably right now. Those are probably the biggest things in terms of there's unquestionably a financial difference between let's say the outside linebackers coach, since we're talking about that position, and the assistant outside linebackers coach. Those guys are paid differently. One of them is leading the room, right? They're the primary voice in that room. And that doesn't mean the other guy doesn't have any voice. I mean, I think Trent Harris had quite a voice last season from what I've been able to gather. So that it's just not what it used to be. It's not where you're stuck in, and basketball is the same, right? It's not like where you're stuck in 10 for football. It has to be 10. These are the only 10 guys who can go. Or in basketball, these are the only 3 guys who can coach on the court, the only 3 guys who can go. That's all washed away. So I just think that was important. We need to talk about that and explain how that's evolved over the last few years, but it still makes us wonder what this looks like for Illinois football in terms of how they kind of piece this. Do they bring in someone to just flat out, you are the new outside linebackers coach, you are one of the quote unquote 10 assistants, or do you move some pieces around? Do you just leave a Trent Harris as the assistant and promote someone else to another job? Do you promote Trent Harris? It feels like there's a lot of different avenues here, Jeremy, that Bret Bielema can go with.
All right, my move is this. Art Sikowski, move him to assistant coach. Let Alex Panos and Trent Harris take over the outside linebackers room, tag team that thing. Terrence Jamison oversees it. Give him a little bit more responsibility. Maybe give Terrence even more of a bump so you can keep him around, because NFL teams, other teams, I'm sure are going to want him. But I got to start thinking about when Barry Illini gets a head coaching job, right? And Art Sikowski has proven his worth on the recruiting trail. He's the assistant quarterback's coach, and while Barry Illini oversees that and is the quarterback's coach, Art is hands-on, right? He's doing a ton of work with those quarterbacks. You've already heard about his impact. So I know he's 24. I know he's got a lot in front of him. I want to keep that guy in my program. I want to keep anybody from poaching him. And while Lunny could eventually, he's going to get a head coaching job, I think, in the next year or two. You could take an assistant with him or whatever, could take Art with him. I'd like to get Art as a quarterback's coach, get him in, start. He might be the OC, 2 OCs from now, but I just feel like get him in here and elevate him, because I feel like he's earned it, Joey, and I feel like I want to keep that guy. So Bret Bielema was way smarter, has a way better idea of what I'm doing, but I just think that idea should be on the table. That Art Sikowski is an assistant coach at age 24 should be something they could think about, because I feel the way I feel about him, the way I felt about Nathan Shieldhouse early in his career, that this guy is a rising star. He's on a rocket ship to be an OC by the time he's in his early 30s. And I want to facilitate that and keep that in my program as long as possible.
Yeah, that's something that as soon as it kind of became clear to us that there was movement, that was an early idea that you and I had thrown out there. And someone's going to hear this and think, whoa, no, right? And I get that. But you're right. Barry Lunny's going to get a head coaching job at some point in the very near future. And I think we'd also him and Art are close. Mm-hmm. Him and Art have grown really, really close during this process. So he's someone that, maybe Barry says, hey, maybe Art's part of Barry's initial staff when that happens. I don't know. We're just speculating at this point, right? But if you're Illinois, maybe you try to put yourself in a position to make sure things are really, this opportunity is really, really good for Art Sikowski, and you keep a bridge, because Art's had a hand in building that quarterback room. Barry gets deserved credit, a lot of it, for what he's done with quarterbacks, what he's done with the offense. There's no reason to minimize Barry Lunny's credit in building that. But we also talk to these kids who commit, and Art's name comes up a lot. He's really involved.
Art talked to Michael Clayton more than anybody. Art talked to Carson Boyd as much as anybody. Was big in Trey Petty, right? He's been a massive part of that. He's a part of development. I'm not saying you hire Art Sikowski as quarterback's coach to be Barry Lunny's replacement. I think he's got to prove more than that. But I just feel like he's kind of earned that, and I feel like he could be the guy after the guy.
Yeah, and when you're right, I didn't cover Nathan Shieldhouse. Obviously, you did. We just saw him interview everywhere in the NFL to be an offensive coordinator. You can tell pretty early when guys have it. You just can. And Art was a guy, really, as a player, you were like, whoa, you're clapping a lot. You got a lot of energy. Okay. And now as a coach, and that you hear the way that Bielema, that Lunny, that recruits talk about him, you see him, what we see of him out there on the practice field. And it's like, okay, this guy's got it. He's a rising star in this. And we'll see how Illinois goes about this, because, it's a push and pull in terms of what they want to do. But I'm with you. I think he's earned an opportunity to have this conversation. And I think that's the biggest thing.
All right. Let's get to a few super chats. Appreciate the people joining us on this work day, early, or I guess late morning, early afternoon. Def, always here, man. $9.99. Appreciate you, Def. I love the approach here. It seems like a combo of James Kirkland's trait finding under Lovey, but with Zook, get safeties that are too big for corner, get linebackers that are too big for safety, etc. Yeah, I think this is a combo. Like James Kirkland and Lovey Smith found some talent. They just didn't win enough recruiting battles, right? It just didn't feel like the effort was quite as what it needed to be. Didn't feel like the staff was as strong of recruiters, or was all in on recruiting, the actual grunt work of it. But boy, they could find talent. And but now you could pair that with Ron Zook's ability to get after it, the doggedness on the trail that him and his staff had. Yeah, I feel like it is a nice combination of that. So I think that's a good one. Def also says $4.99 super chat. With Bolin and Sintum, are outside linebacker coaches frustrated with outside linebacker usage under Henry? I mean,
I don't want to speculate that. I think when you're an outside linebackers coach, I don't think you get to Illinois and like, wait a minute, you're using this position like what? Like you know what that is and how that's used. I don't think that's really a fair speculation because I think both situations are different. Charlie Bolin went back to the NFL. He was a longtime NFL guy, took his first job in college. By all accounts, did a wonderful job in terms of building relationships in the state, developing. He went back to the NFL. Clint Sintum left for Colorado State. As you mentioned, I think it's fair to speculate and kind of see how that the writing on the wall for how that went. So I don't see that as something that adds up in my brain where that was the case. I think that's just maybe some fan speculation mixed with the fact that this position seeing some or fan frustration mixed with this position seeing some turnover.
I would say that I bet Bielema, because he's coached this position in the NFL, has very high standards, right? And I do think he knows what he has talent-wise in that room with Gabe Backus. And Seth Coleman didn't have a great year last year. How much of that was him? How much of that was coaching? I don't know. But I just think he's got a high standard for that room. And with Alec Bryant coming back, who I know Bielema sounds very high on, and Leon Lowry coming to that room, who's very hungry to make an impact like he did at Syracuse and not Wisconsin. It'll be interesting to see. One more. Coach Ron Zook. What's up, Zooker? Congratulations, boys. You haven't all seen this level of recruiting since I was putting the full court press on John Davis's dad back in the day. Yeah, that was the class of 2011, the last top 36 recruiting class Illinois had. 2009 was the last top 31. Let's get Ryan Easterling in here before we get out. Ryan, what's up, man? Oh, you are on mute.
He's on mute. This dude never pods from the same place twice. It is always where in the world is Ryan Easterling. Right now, he is held hostage. It's clear somewhere.
Yeah, the settings all screwed up.
Man.
There we go. Good grief, man. Yeah, it's like we've been doing all these video meetings for years, and I still can't figure out my technology.
When we had to go back to a Zoom press conference at one time, me and Joey were in hell. Well, Ryan, I'll just open up the floor for you. 2 4 stars out of Ohio. What do you think?
Man, I mean, yeah, I think you guys are going to be touching on this in more detail with some analysis on how they've recruited out of Ohio. But I think it just goes to show that their reach is expanding. They're not only just doing better in the state of Illinois, but they're also starting to do better out of state. And to land guys of this caliber from a state where Ohio State national title game team, I mean, like, holy crap. They're going in and getting they got a guy that was number 3 cornerback in the overall in the country, top 50 player by 24/7 Sports, had an Ohio State offer and was in his top group. And then you go and get Cam Thomas, who had Michigan, Oregon, Indiana, several other good programs in that top group. That hasn't happened very much recently. And it just goes to show that the success on the field, the message this staff is sending, it's resonating with these guys. And, both these guys got a chance to watch their tape. Really like what both of them bring. Victor Singleton, you see why he's a top 50 guy. He's just an absolute ball hawk, great ball skills, really fluid. You see some of those shades of what Spoon did. And without creating any false expectations for him, I think he has that same potential. We'll see what he does once he gets there, but just a great ball player, great ball skills. And then Cam Thomas, I mentioned this when we talked a couple weeks back, but got to see a little bit of him when I was watching Bierman's tape and then digging into his a lot more. You see just that versatility as both an edge rusher and as kind of a weak side backer. So the two of those guys, Bierman and Thomas, played off each other really, really well in high school, and now they're going to get another chance to do that for 3 years in college.
Ryan, you and I have kind of been doing this about the same time. Like, how do you put into context this start to the class?
This is honestly probably one of the hottest starts I've seen him get off to in a class. In the past, even during the Zook years, a lot of times it took till the summer, and some of that's definitely a factor of the recruiting schedule changes. The cycle has changed quite a bit. You've got early signing periods. They've moved around some of the contact periods, but to me, this is Bielema just seeing that they've got this momentum right now and understanding the urgency of seizing it. They don't want to let it go. They want to keep it moving, get these guys on board because it's getting more and more competitive early on to get these guys locked into these spots. And so, in the past, you saw this under Lovey especially. They were very laissez-faire about trying to press on guys early. They would definitely be active in trying to get them on campus and things, but there was not as much – I don't want to say pressure, but there's not as much urgency to get guys committed. And now Bielema, you see this urgency, this sense of urgency that's generating buzz, it's generating momentum, and it's really, I think, allowing them to catch the wind here and take off.
Joe, you got anything for Ryan?
I was going through while Ryan was talking. They have 8 commits on February 6th.
Yeah,
I don't know if you do the what it means all of it, Jeremy. I got to go through and
I think
that.
A third of the class. I think they're a third of the class in, and the average star rating, which there has been star inflation over the last 5 to 10 years, but their average star rating is 89.15. The highest they have ever had was last year, I believe, at 86.8. So even in the last 3 years, like it's 2 points higher. That's a huge advantage, like a huge increase in the quality of talent that you're getting. Now, it'll probably come down as you add more prospects as the class goes on, but the foundation of what this class is, and even with guys like J.K. Alexander, whose top 2 was Illinois and Michigan, right? Like Landon Von Segern picked Illinois over Iowa. You're just the quality of prospects you've added early is a way higher foundation than they've had in the past.
Yeah, I'm also just fascinated, as Ryan said, just getting this many guys on board before you even get to spring football, before you get to those summer OVs. Like that's really telling. That's going to be my afternoon project, Jeremy, before the women's game, is to see the last few classes when that 8th commit has happened, because most of them are going to be June. I would imagine the last few are going to be June. So as Ryan said, you strike it when the iron's hot. You're keeping that buzz going. Illinois football has had buzz pretty much every week since August.
Right.
And some weeks have been a heck of a lot more. So keeping your program in the news cycle matters. Keeping them front of mind matters. It does. Maybe not more than X, Y, or Z, but it's certainly something that's impactful.
And Bielema's really good at that, right? I mean, he knows how to spread out the news.
Yeah, can I hit on that, Ryan?
Go for it.
I don't think it is coincidence that the day after the class of 2025 is wrapped up, that they announce another 2026 commit. I know for a fact that is not coincidence.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And the longer you can keep positive vibes, spread it out. That's why when they do the return announcements for the players that are coming back, they don't do multiple in a day. Usually you kind of one a day or one every other day, because one, it gives those guys their time. It gives them their shine, their moment in the spotlight. But 2, it just keeps that good positivity moving along. And that positivity is part of what they use to sell the program. So like if things go silent for a while, that flame dies down, and maybe there's not as much excitement. But if you consistently just sustain that level of excitement with the program, that resonates with these guys. They see it in the fan base, they see it in the excitement with the team, within the program, and it matters.
Yeah, and you just keep stoking those flames, right, Ryan? And having 8 guys on board to help sell, I think is significant. I mean, you had Michael Clayton working Kenyon Alston that entire time, working with Kingston Shaw. Like those guys all know each other from the Orlando area. Now you have Davon Grant sitting right next to Nasir Rankin during his junior day with Justin Stepp. And Michael Clayton and Kenyon Alston going to see Max Sutter's basketball game. Like this is huge. Like the fact that you can kind of tell JC Anderson, oh, look at this quarterback, top 30 composite. We got other receivers. You're a different tight end than we've had. Like, join these guys and you'll be surrounded by really, really good talent. And the staff will tell you all the time, Ryan, like the best recruiters are the commits. I've seen that play a role, a huge role.
Oh yeah. And you see the way that the commits are reacting to their new, classmates. So like, Kenyon Alston was stoked about seeing this commit come through this morning. You see all these other guys reacting to it, and it's just they continue to compound, continue to build because, again, it's the word momentum. I don't want to beat it to death, but momentum matters, and it'll stay going in that direction as long as you've got momentum and keep traveling that way. So there's no reason to try and slow it down and keep building on it.
Yeah, momentum matters. Perception of your program matters, and Illinois has those things going really well for it right now. We talked about classmates being the best recruiters. We know J.C. Anderson is going to be an early spring OV guy, an April OV guy. Usually that is you're here by yourself and we're rolling out the red carpet. I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois went that road again. I also wouldn't be surprised if they bring one of these other really talented guys on campus that weekend for another early OV to see if you can build those threads, build those connections with J.C. Anderson, because you've got the guys to bring in. You've got the needle movers to bring in to say, hey, be a part of this with me, be a part of this with whoever else is in this recruiting class. And I know they like to pair and have those recruits talk to one another. So that's a kind of a ways down subplot, but I'm really interested in how they handle that.
Yeah, and they do recruit friends, right? Grant Bierman and Cam Thomas, Kenyon Alston, and Michael Clayton, Angel McCollum, and Demetrius John became really good friends in high school. So I think it's really smart to do that. All right, Ryan, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, just really interested to see who's next. I mean, I would not be surprised to see another commit come before spring football. I mean, we got a little over a month until spring football kicks off, and so they're hitting it hard, they're hitting it hot. But I think, Jeremy, you had posted something about the class ranking, and maybe you guys touched on this before I jumped in, but I had mentioned, I don't remember the last time Illinois had a recruiting class, even early on, that was in the teens.
Yeah, I was trying to think, the only time I could remember was Beeson and Williams. When those guys committed, they only had 3 commits at the time. It was those two and Griffin Moore. I don't know how high they were at that point. That's the only other time I can think of any point in the calendar when Illinois had a top 15 recruiting class at that point. You'd have to go all the way back to 2007 when I think Illinois signed a top 15 class with Regis Ben and Martez Wilson on top.
Yeah, I mean, and that's almost 20 years ago. It's crazy. It's been that long, but you've seen it. They've just stuck to their guns, done it the way they wanted to do it. And over 5 years, it's taken some time to get there, but they're getting there, and they're finally getting these guys. And I don't think they have any intention of slowing down anytime soon.
Ryan Easterling, thanks for hopping on, man.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, good stuff. Before we get out of here, I just want to mention condolences to the family of Mark Allen, the Illini baseball pitching coach. Passed away, had been battling cancer for the last couple of years. I didn't know him personally. I've covered that program in depth, but I know everyone speaks very, very highly of him. I had experience in Major League Baseball as well. So rest in peace to Mark Allen, and condolences to his family, his wife, and his kids. I think everybody's been touched by cancer, and it's awful, and just condolences to the family. I also want to bring up Illini women's basketball has a home game tonight, and Joey, they're rolling. They've won 6-7. You had a great story on Genesis Bryant yesterday. She had just put the team on her back on the East Coast and got them to 2 wins, including a marquee victory at Maryland. So they host Northwestern tonight, 0-9. They have a good NCAA tournament resume right now, 32 in the net. Feel like they great shot to be in. I think they're in the 8-9 line right now for ESPN. Just don't want to slip up, right? They've won 6-7. They've done an amazing job. Shauna Green should be in Coach of the Year consideration. I think UCLA's coach is going to be tough to beat there as they're undefeated, but another chance to go see this Illini women's basketball team, and they definitely deserve people's attention right now.
Yeah, they're a really good story too. I mean, this is a team easy to write off a month ago, and I wrote that it would be difficult to push back to the NCAA tournament when you lose Makaira Cook, when you lose Gretchen Dolan, and players like Genesis Bryant, Adalia McKenzie, Kendall Bostic, Brent Shupill, the players we've been talking about for 3 years with this program have willed them back to that. I think that win at Maryland, if everything just simply goes to chalk in the close of the regular season, that probably should have got them in. Northwestern's a team that struggled. Illinois beat them handily in Evanston last month. I think the Wisconsin game at Wisconsin on Sunday is a sneaky kind of, I don't want to say trap game because it's not like you're between anything, but that's kind of a sneaky one. It's going up to Wisconsin and winning that game. The Badgers have struggled, but that's kind of one to circle there. Just really, really impressive what this team has been able to do with 6.5 sometimes 7-player rotation, gets given what the injuries were. Genesis Bryant out east was spectacular. Her seamlessly sliding into a point guard role. I mean, it's not like it's totally new to her, but Makaira Cook was this team's point guard. So for Genesis Bryant to step into that, obviously Kendall Bostic, just to face the consistency for this program. We've talked about her a great deal. Adalia McKenzie, Brent Shupil, Barry Wallace. I mean, they've figured it out, Jeremy, and playing a lot of minutes and doing it, but it's a really a heck of a good run here since those two were officially announced as out for the season last month.
It's awesome that Illinois has a coach who is considered for Coach of the Year. I just want to get out ahead of it. If UCLA goes undefeated, I don't think Shauna Green has gotten robbed of the Coach of the Year award, because UCLA was not projected to do that. And to win the Big Ten, to potentially beat USC for that, who was very heavily favored to win the Big Ten, I think is worthy of the Big Ten Coach of the Year. But she certainly made her case, Joey, to overcome these. What an amazing coaching job, and what an amazing job by these seniors, right? Like to not go quietly. Like, this could have been a bad finish to what had been a great career. And Kendall Bostic's just misconsistency. And Adalia McKenzie has raised her game, but Jen has really raised her game. And then Barry Wallace, like you said, and Jasmine Brown-Hager stepping into roles and not being fazed by it. I think is good for the long term for those guys, but certainly good for the long term of this program to get back to the NCAA tournament, as long as they take care of business here.
Yeah, you're right. And UCLA, I mean, that feels like, how do you not have the number one team of the country as your Coach of the Year? And the hard part for Illinois is they are kind of performing to expectations coming into the year. There's just a lot of depth and a lot of context that has to go into that. And sometimes, Jeremy, as you know how this goes, sometimes that depth and sometimes that context can be overlooked in some of these postseason awards. I understand it. You know, voters have a lot they're juggling, right? And when you have a team performing like UCLA has performed, it makes it pretty easy to not really fully dive in. But that doesn't mean we can't give the flowers to Shauna Green and this coaching staff for figuring it out on the fly in the face of injuries that are difficult. And that's not including Letty Vasconcelos, who was out in the summer and a player we thought was going to be a post presence for Illinois. So just really a heck of a good job by Shauna Green, by those players to you're right. I mean, that could have been a sour ending to their career, which revived this program in ways that we didn't think it would happen this early, in ways that I don't really know if we thought it would happen as steep as it has, right? In terms of talking about a second NCAA tournament appearance in 3 years for a team that was a literal punching bag for years and years and years and years. And now they're going to Maryland, they're winning at Maryland, they're going to Indiana and winning at Indiana, they're beating Iowa, they're taking care of the teams they should beat. I know the Minnesota game, the Washington game, those are going to stick. You know, those are going to leave a bad taste. I mean, those are games that, especially Minnesota, you had that one, you really needed to win that on the road, and they figured it out from that point. So it's a really good job, a really impressive job, and I hope we're continuing to give them the coverage that they deserve, and I hope people are taking notice of what's happening with Illinois women's basketball, because it's really impressive right now.
Really impressive what football is doing as well. And hey, basketball still got a chance.
Poor Allen. Allen's going to look at what are they talking about? Getting on a hot streak, shooting, and he's going to look at those 3-point numbers like, oh my goodness. Oh man, what a wreck.
Make some shots. I'm sorry, that's not like my analysis. Make open shots. Maybe you'll play a little bit better. They got other issues too. But anyway, any final thoughts here, Joey, before we get out of here?
Who would have thought, Jeremy, that football, February 6th, is the loudest thing we're talking about? At least today. I know you and Piper had probably, I would imagine, a very comment-filled podcast. So I was getting some R&R last night. But
Brad Underwood's a terrible coach, and Kasparis is not even an NBA prospect. That's what the comments were saying.
Can I guess was, I don't want to call him out, was St. Dom actively a part of this? Yeah. Hey, if anything, we know our viewers and our readers. St. Dom is a pretty easy one to guess, and some of those post game. But it's just to reiterate, put a cap on it. Football recruiting is insane right now.
Well, I want to come in here and just be like, hey, we are here to brighten up your days with Illinois football recruiting talk. Which, what a statement that is. How far Illinois has come for that to be the case.
You know what I was weirdly thinking about today is obviously 2023 fans were pretty ticked off the way that went. And now it feels like Bret Bielema walks on water in town, right? And there's a way, and I get it, man. The way that he put this, and he and this coaching staff and the team put that season together, the way the recruiting class is coming together. I, for whatever reason, was like, what are they going to do? Like, they're obviously all behind this guy. So I was like, how is this going to play in the next season? That T-bar is going to be on the big screen at Memorial Stadium.
I was just thinking about that.
And then I wondered if the fans would do it.
I was just thinking about if there's an eventual statue of Bret Bielema here, it's got to be the T-bar.
It felt like a moment, didn't it?
It was a huge moment. Like, now you have to follow up on it, right?
Sure,
but like,
right.
if the way we think this can go, where he turns this into Iowa or Wisconsin, right? Like, that T-bar is going to be the statue. It has to be. There's no more iconic moment. Like, I don't want to see him like doing this or, just kind of has a sheet in front of him. No, it's got to be a T-bar. That is the essence of Bret Bielema. And it's kind of like a power stance that brought some swagger and power back to Illinois football.
It's definitely going on the video board in the first quarter, correct? I'm imagining the student section drunk against Eastern Illinois. They're all T-bar. Maybe some other people will pick it up. But that felt like it's so dumb to think of it like this, because obviously there were a lot of fireworks after, but that was something. Like, that is one of the pictures you're going to think of when you think of that team last season.
I'm here Beamer. I'm here SEC. I'm here college football. That's what that felt like.
Big Bird kicking the door and T-barring.
That's right.
Bret Bielema.
Love it. All right, for Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Thank you to everybody for watching us live on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell as well. Thank you for listening on the podcast as well. Follow us, rate us, review us wherever you get your podcasts. We are loaded at Illini Inquirer with all the latest on Cam Thomas, Piper with his reports from Rutgers. Joey will have women's basketball coverage. And it took me too long to mention this, but right now we have a flash sale going on through the week, 60% off a VIP membership. We love all the support here on the YouTube channel, on the podcast, but VIP members are our lifeblood. So if you want to support us and get the most insight into Illinois athletics, go to IlliniInquirer.com and sign up for that. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.